Hello, welcome to Mining Now. Today on the show, we have Ralph Smith. He's the Global Services Director at Dassault Systems. We've done a couple episodes with Dassault. I believe Roy Slack did one of the episodes. And we're just going to keep peeling layers back on their capabilities. Today, I think we're going to talk a lot about resource estimation. So Ralph's going to walk us through that a bit. Ralph, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Jared.
You're in a much more relaxed environment than last time. This is actually a reshoot. We had you on at iMark. We on our end had some technical difficulties, but so this is the relaxed version of the show. We can take our time.
Exactly.
Uh,
Perfect.
okay, first thing, that model behind you, that's your own project. You were telling me.
Yeah, so that's my first year of COVID hobby.
Uh,
Small investment to keep me sane while being locked down for a few months.
did it work?
It works, which is a positive. The
Ha-
second year of COVID project, not quite so successful.
Well, you were saying this one is like a test individually, the mechanics of it, and the other one was
Yes.
all at once. You had to test it.
Yeah, so this one, as you constructed it, the Liba, it gets you to test it at each phase to make sure
Mm.
everything's working. Whereas when I did the Caterpillar dozer, the testing and calibration was right at the end after you've completed it.
And
And
no mistakes, fortunately, right?
well, no, unfortunately not. So I'm still too depressed to go back
Yeah.
halfway and start again effectively on the dozer, but I'll get there eventually.
Well, I was saying to you off air, we maybe at CIM or something, we might bring one of those and see if everybody wants to start. We get to start fights over how to put one of those together. What's your background in the industry? Before we jump into Dassault, what's your background in the industry, Ralph?
I started out in surveying initially, and then moved into engineering. So I spent probably 10 years working in underground hard rock mining.
Hmm.
And then moved into technology for about 8 years, and then spent 15 to 20 years in consulting before moving back to technology with Dassault about 6 years ago now.
What is your role with Dassault?
So the role I have with Dassault is focused on services, so delivery of our technologies globally. We are about providing consulting services and enabling the clients to maximize the use and application of the software that we develop.
Can you give us that? We've had Dassault on a couple times. Obviously, a lot of people will know of you already. But can you give that 30-second overview of the company? Before we jump into some more technical stuff.
Yeah. So look, I think the key thing about Dassault Systems is that we're a science engineering software company, and I think at our heart, at our DNA, we are all about sustainability, and our mission is, to harmonize product, nature, and life. No matter what industry we're working in, we're striving to incorporate that into everything we do.
Founded in 1989 in South Africa, the Bloemburton Engineering Group is a world leader in ventilation, refrigeration, and cooling systems for underground mines. BBE Consulting Canada, created in Greater Sudbury, Ontario, is part of the BBE Group of companies since 2016. Its services include mine ventilation and cooling system modeling, feasibility studies, detailed engineering, procurement and construction management, as well as site ventilation surveys, ventilation audits, and training mentoring for underground mines across all America. You can reach out to BBE Consulting Canada by visiting bbegroup.ca or writing to enquiries@bbegroup.ca. Geograph is Australia's leading manufacturer of enhanced performance mining parts. Geograph designs and manufactures enhanced wear parts to suit major mining machinery from Caterpillar, Komatsu, Hitachi, Liebherr, and more. The Geograph Enhanced Performance range is designed to reduce downtime and operating costs for mine sites and off-site repairers by engineering wear parts to last longer. Geograph challenges you to expect more from yourself and your assets. Visit geograph.com.au for more information or click the link in the video description below. L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state of the art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more.
Is when you're in the industry now, I think I asked you, of course, this is a reshoot, so I think I asked this before, but have you seen a big shift in even in the last? I know there's been a huge shift in the last 10 years. I'm talking even in the last, well, I guess since COVID, has the has that really accelerated the interest in what Dassault is offering? Has it made a difference?
It has. I think the industry started to any crisis creates an opportunity, right? And unfortunately, COVID had created a global crisis and how we manage things and how we deal with things. So my commentary here is probably more focused around Australia, but I think it's common globally in that we had many companies all of a sudden minimizing the number of people who were
Mm-hmm.
on site on in operations. You kept it to the bare minimum to de-risk, any spread or issues around COVID. Um, and that opened up an opportunity, right? So you saw the growth of video conferencing became second nature. I think I felt like I lived on a video conference for the first
It's a strange time, yeah.
first yeah during 2020, right? It was just one after the other after the other after the other, and to that point, all of a sudden you're now having people working from home, working from corporate offices where they were on site. So that access to data, access to technology um, across a broader spectrum to what local area networks they would have had on their operational sites became a key part. And then data, single source of that data also becomes paramount, right? And I think that's where Dassault Systems and the 3D Experience platform provided a key opportunity where they could really just start leveraging the cloud immediately
Mm-hmm.
and start utilizing that to centralize all their data rather than being on remote desktops or isolated servers on sites where corporate and people now working from home
Mm-hmm.
could not access before. So that's one of the key changes that happened. Everyone was looking at, but it was always being one of those cans that just kept getting kicked down the road because
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
everything
that's what
was
I was
working
getting at.
fine.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was also wondering, did the tier of values offered or the value adds, did how you tier it to and deliver that to customers? I mean, in that initial communications when they're thinking about adopting your platforms and services, did it did it did the did you change the first things you would allow them to know that it did, if that makes sense?
Um, I think we probably highlighted the key because you focus on where their pain points are and how you can provide a benefit, and just centralizing data and access became the key topic, right? That
Right.
everyone was talking about. Um, I think a lot of the other challenges is different licensing technologies that
Mm.
different software people use
As everybody's
also
plugging a
became
whole
apparent.
bunch new ones in,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. So getting access to licenses of different apps became another challenge because people
Oh,
were no longer
interesting.
on the network back on site. They needed access. Remote logging in was one way, but getting a more flexible licensing technology that
Mm.
Dassault offer also allowed that through the cloud.
So
Uh,
that all sort of opened up the door to expand capabilities then as well.
yeah, it,
Yeah.
it it does, and it sort of brings everything forward so that you're adopting more flexible model, right? A more flexible framework where you're getting into more things like not only services as consulting, but you're more broadly adapting software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, all these things that we often talk about in the technology world and probably not so much in the mining technical space for mine planners, process engineers, etc. But this becomes more relevant now
Mm.
because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. But it also, I think, will remain relevant because as we try and attract talent to the industry, the next generation of people will want this sort of flexibility. They want to be able to work from different
Hmm.
places. They want to be able to be engaged on artificial intelligence, machine learning. They want to be able to use processing power that, if you're just rolling around on your laptop or your desktop
Hmm.
workstation, you just don't have the capability. So if we look to the future, and when the future's already here realistically,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's really that cloud, that platform as a service, infrastructure as a service is paramount to people uh, getting results faster. Because I mean, one of the key things is the faster you can get to a decision, an informed decision, then you're ahead of your competitors, right? You can accelerate your ability to make decisions faster and react to different circumstances. Now, whether that's just on day-to-day operations, or as we've had discussions with mining companies, often going from discovery to production can be 15, 20 years, right? Companies are wanting now to reduce that. And one particular company we're working with wants to reduce that down to 7 or 5 years,
Wow.
which is making a lot of decisions without having had time to collect a lot of the data. So it's all about understanding the risk and the uncertainty of the unknowns and how much they will impact. So again, speed, simulation, machine learning are things that are going to help inform a lot of those decisions to accelerate project development.
You mentioned one company. I would think as you talk about, you know, obviously what's going on in Eastern Europe and just I mean, way before that, the demand in the mining space. I mean, just copper alone is just it will lithium and these things that their production needs to be accelerated. From your standpoint, specifically from Dassault, I imagine it won't be one or two companies that want to cut it down from 15 to 7 years, and not even companies, governments and countries and everybody.
I think everyone is probably aspiring to the same objective. It is just there's always you need one or two that are willing to invest in that transformation because
Right.
you're actually going to change the way you work, and you need commitment across the whole organization to do that. It potentially does also show uh, when it comes to reporting your NI 43101 or JORC
Hmm.
statements, there's going to have to be some assessment around that, and that's obviously going to be influenced too by a lot of those for people to do those sign-offs. So this it's not going to happen quickly. I think there's a lot of stuff we can do um, and still meet the objectives for both the market and reporting. Um, but it does need a commitment from an organisation across the whole organisation to be on board. So that's what I mean. Everyone probably aspires to it, but probably not everyone's willing to commit to the investment to
Hmm.
change management and change process and re-engineering their processes.
At Corporate Traveler, their seamless combination of expert service and innovative booking tech means you have what you need when you need it. Mining companies need experienced agents who know how to get you to far to reach destinations with ease, who understand rotational crew travel, chartering, and so much more. And with an average tenure of 8 years, their agents are the best in the biz and are experts at managing all your mining travel needs. Have an emergency? They've got your back 24/7, anywhere, on any device. Don't get stuck with complicated and rigid travel options. Get it done with Corporate Traveler. Visit them at corptraveler.com. PowerZone carries a massive inventory of pumps, engines, generators, and compressors. However, they don't stop there. They combine imagination with world class engineering. They detail the entire process to every customer. Their pump package testing facility ensures your equipment is landing on site, ready to work. That is PowerZone. Start with inventory, develop with imagination, deliver with integrity. And it's all at powerzone.com. That is PowerZone. The International Conference on Hoisting and Haulage is coming to Montreal this year from August 13th to 16th. The conference will host sessions focusing on the latest state of the art developments and technologies in the shaft hoisting and transportation component of personnel and material. Join us at the conference that is taking place at the Doubletree by Hilton, downtown Montreal. Registrations are open. Visit hoistandhaul2023.cim.org to register and explore sponsorship opportunities.
Let's talk about some of the investments specifically. Resource estimation. That was going to be a key topic here today. Can you give us a sort of the talking points of resource estimation? What does that mean from Dassault's standpoint?
From our perspective, it's really about collecting data and making informed decisions to create value. So once companies have that resource model, you have an asset that increases in value from an exploration tenement, which has potential. So we're now starting to quantify what that value could be before we then move on to the next phase.
Mm,
Um, for a lot of what we're doing around technology is around constructing data models that are connected, so that when we create our geological model or our resource model, the data that's created is actually connected to the source data.
mm,
And what I mean by that, in a simple context, would be if we had I don't know, 30 drill holes that we use to define the geological landscape, um, then that geological model is connected back to those 30 holes. So if we were to add another 5 or 10 holes, then the geological model is notified or understands that it's no longer current or it's not in sync with the source data because we have additional source data. Now, whether you update the geological model is a decision for the appropriate person. But we have this ability now with data models, life cycle management of the data, which adds a lot more value. And that continues on down the value chain. So once we go the geology model, we move into the resource modeling where we're starting to estimate the qualities and quantities of material types, um, which then informs, say, the pit optimization or the block cave study. All these things start to become connected through this data model structure, and it really starts to create value because you then know that you are either using the most current data or your model is not in sync because we've got additional data
mm.
upstream that hasn't been utilized yet, or we have a second model that's being updated in parallel, right? So we can really start to be informed across the value chain. So not just the resource modeler, but the mine planner, and this would extend in down the track to the processing team in the plant that extracts the metal. So when we create all these different schedules and production cycles, they're informed as things are changing as well.
I want to kind of get a like an on the ground understanding of it, Ralph, because in principle, everything you're saying, I do understand. I couldn't carry it out, but I understand the concepts. What I'm kind of a little bit unsure of is, let's say, I mean, we do all these like sensor episodes. They're putting sensors on buckets now. They're putting them on the trucks. They're putting them on the conveyors. I mean, and I'm missing 100 other ones. They're just everywhere, and they're collecting data. So a lot of them are separate companies. Some companies provide a suite in one segment. Are you collecting all of that, or they're like how would I say it like in a mine? Let's say an open pit mine. Are you doing the boreholes and then three other ones, or are you wanting to collect that data that's now sitting on a truck, or on the scoop sensor?
I think we want to be collecting and collating and bring it all together. So to your point, so you're going to have sensors on buckets that scan the bucket material, predict the quality, fragmentation possibly, um, so that that can then be fed into the production line. But we also want that will obviously inform a part of the value chain. With the borehole data, um, we can start to be sensing, say, stuff from, you know, drill machines like Epirocs. We can start to be with their penetration rates. They predict hardness and material.
Yeah.
We can pull that sort of material in and then leverage that so that when we design the blast pattern or design the explosive mix in the holes, we're optimizing the blast to get the right fragmentation, which then has a beneficial flow-on effect into the plant for combination, right? If we can get the material fragmented at the right size that allows the process plant to put through material faster for the same kilowatt hour, then that's a cost benefit, right? It's which all goes to sustainability, or so we're getting a higher throughput because we're spending less time because in the SAG mill or ball mill, which is one of the big energy consumers. So we want to be able to pull that. So the 3D Experience platform really is a business and platform for transformation. So we've obviously got all these suppliers, as you've said around sensor data coming in from fleet management systems,
hmm
but a lot of them are all dealing with a specific challenge around that. So we want to collect and pull that data and then leverage that data. So we're tracking the material. So um, we have technology around mine operations management, which will connect to fleet management systems. It will connect to conveyors and sensors so that we can pull it all together into an overall plan of the value chain. Now, where that value chain might end might be where we produce the concentrate at the plant, right, on site. But we can also then potentially track that concentrate from plant to port to ship to the end user. And theoretically, we could then be interconnected with companies that then certify those quality of product.
Hmm.
So where they take samples at the port to say this is at this specification, we could incorporate that. But also we can reconcile all that because we said, there was X tons of this quality in the pit. Then the sensor data, as it went through the value chain, said, well, it's showing that it's probably not quite as high, or it's higher in quality. The tonnage is similar when we load it into from the fleet management system. We can actually reconcile all the way through that process by collecting all the data from the different data sources, like, as I said, those sensors on conveyors, sensors on buckets, and obviously then the manual surveys and drone data of stockpiles that may be managed that way as well.
Delmia Mine Execution is a complete end-to-end solution for decision support and production management. Using integrated data, you can track and trace processes, make informed decisions, boost productivity, and control costs. Manage production activities and data. Perform accurate material reconciliation and variance analysis. Increase site operational visibility and worker productivity. Manage inventory and asset performance. Accelerate resolution of non-conformance issues. With real-time IIoT connectivity, virtual modeling, and simulation, Delmia Mine Execution drives excellence in operational efficiency, productivity, and profitability.
When you're talking, I mean, this is a huge amount of data now. If companies want to collect data now, there's really no limit. And probably by this time next year, there'll be even more ways to collect it. How do you go about assessing a technology to make sure it aligns with what your end goal is?
I think one of the key things we adopt is a framework where we engage with the customer, right? So we're actually trying to understand their pain and their challenge, uh, and where the opportunities are, right? So we have an engagement model that really is sort of, I suppose, a consulting model where we come in and we analyze what they're doing, how they're doing it, where the gaps may be in technology, where they're having challenges because things aren't working as planned. And it's all through interviews with management to understand what their objectives are, what they're not being able to achieve, what they're being successful with, and then building up a effectively building up a bit of a roadmap of understanding around that. And there's often some big challenges that are enormously time uh, heavy, but there are also many opportunities in that process
Mm,
that are quick wins that can accelerate them getting to their end goal. Now, all of these things that we do need to be measurable. We need to align with KPIs and KVIs. Um, and that understanding what the company's individuals or parts of the organization's objectives are around that is key, because if we're not supporting those, we're not really being successful. And I think that's the thing. It needs to be measurable.
mm,
Um, Often we always talk about value. People always think value as a a, a dollar value, but often it can be time. Time is the other key
mhm,
component to value for me, in that if you can collect all this and make decisions, informed decisions faster, then there is a huge benefit to that.
mhm.
And if you're trusting the data that's coming in to make those decisions, that's one of the key ones. Then there's obviously the economic value that you're getting. So you're getting a better return, you're getting better productivity, you're getting better throughput, you're getting more out of each component or part of the process uh, to generate that value. So I think everything has to be defined upfront, what you're actually trying to achieve and how you're going to measure that. Without doing that step, um, you can implement some wonderful technology
Mm.
that may not actually get you where you want to be.
I realize that they're both going to be challenges because the mining, like, because Dassault originally came out of the aerospace, right? 3D modeling of
Correct.
planes. So which is a little, as complex as planes are, they're not quite as varied in landscape, let's say. Um, so, what is the main challenge of adopting? If you come in with your system, is it going to be onboarding people? Is it just the uniqueness of each mine, or do they go hand in hand?
I think it's a bit of both, right? Mining will always thinks of itself as being unique, and every factory, let's call each one of them a factory, a rock factory, for a better phrase.
Right? Yeah.
They are all unique, right? No rock factory is the same. Um, so what we really need to be able to do is have that framework of processes
Hmm.
that get you to the end goal. So, you know, everything that we do on mines, there's a lot of commonality. There's a lot of areas that are very, very similar, and we just vary parts or portions of that. So you can really start to leverage and standardize. I think standardization is one of those key areas, which
Hmm.
I'm not sure mining has always been uh, passionate about when it comes down to particularly data management, because this is what we're talking about now, right? Sensors, data, consistency, repeatability, auditability, that whole governance, transparency
Ralph,
sort of things.
yeah, I want to, this is a key thing, because, some questions you wanted to ask them on different episodes and you don't really get a chance because it's not the right person, but you've got that. So in comparison to in aerospace, if you've got, if you've got 10 plane manufacturers, are they using a standardized process? Whereas if you've got 100 mines, they're all going to be using there's probably a conveyor on every single one. So there's similarities, but are is there really a lack of that standardized process across the industry, or is it becoming more like, or is it
I,
becoming
I,
more?
I th- Yeah, I think it's becoming more standardized. I think we've got all the similar procedures, but if you talk about it to the industry, I don't think that in the past they like to think of themselves as similar to the mine down the road. I
Mm,
think in aerospace they recognise that their processes are all aligned and similar. They would again probably do things slightly differently. I'm not from that industry, but
right. Yeah.
it's very much very safety driven, right? Everything they do, they want to track and audit. I think mining is only just really starting to appreciate that benefit of that. And I think it's probably the bigger mining companies
Mm,
have recognised it first. I think the mid tier, smaller tiers probably see it, but probably are struggling to understand how they can do it because they have less people, um, and it becomes more a challenge. They often outsource a lot of stuff
yeah.
when you get into the smaller mining companies, right? The mid tiers, they'll use consultants, which presents another challenge, right? But the aerospace and manufacturing do that. You know, that they will design the seat for a car, um, and that will be outsourced to a manufacturer that builds the seat down the road from the car manufacturer,
Hmm.
and everything's shipped in a truck up the road to be assembled at another plant. So you can do these things. You can use and leverage third parties to design pits or underground workings, um, but it's being able to access it and make sure that everyone's working off one single platform and one single data model. So as soon as that design is published, approved, processed, and implemented, everyone has immediate access to it.
Right.
I think for us as an industry, we still have 5 copies of that design floating around on 5 different machines, potentially. Right? There will be a master area, but everyone often takes a copy so
Right.
it's easier for them on their hard drive. Really simple things that we probably do with Excel. We take a copy of someone's Excel,
Hmm.
we make some changes, then we change the version number to
Yep.
version 3
Yep.
or put our initials on it and push it back up again. Um, Simple things like that around data management is probably the critical thing for us that we can, as an industry, adopt today uh, with the 3D Experience platform, right? Because it allows us to have that ability to track a life cycle of um, design, review, approved, published, or it's frozen, or it's in work during that life cycle. And once published and approved, um, that is what everyone has access to immediately. It's not, it goes into the system and into the platform and it replaces the previous version. So no one, you can then immediately, when you drag and drop that 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 data, you have the current data. And I think that's the difference between, say, server folder structures and adopting a platform
Mm,
that allows this ability to be always having the right data at the right time.
mm. Can the mid tiers adopt it, or even
Yeah,
or let's go even further. The lower scale of the mid tiers.
I,
If they
I
contacted you, can they?
yeah, I would actually say they will get more benefit out of it faster
Hmm.
than some of the bigger companies. Bigger companies, change management is going to be much more challenging. Had a lot of conversations over the last 7 or 8 months with, I effectively call them startups, right? So small companies starting their first mine or just in the study phases
Hmm.
of their first mine.
Yeah.
Everything is outsourced. They do very little themselves other than manage the project. Um, and all the consultants are doing the environmental review, the archaeological studies, the optimizations, the resource models. They're all doing different components. And one of the key complaints or challenges they express is we get reports. We don't often get the data. So,
Really?
you know, really, because they're focused on that, they don't really necessarily have, no, they don't often have mine planning technology in their offices because they don't need
Right.
it right now because the consulting groups, the third parties, are doing the work for them. So
Oh,
they
I
want
see.
access to
Yep.
that. And so simply by having all the third party contributors publishing all their data directly to the platform, they have immediate access to it. They can have
Mm,
access to the 3D data. They can actually start to make informed decisions around that data because it's all available to them, whether it's reports, whether it's processes, standard operating procedures, whether it's the designs, the pit optimizations, the stope layouts, the ventilation. You can consume all that into the 3D experience and access all that 3D data. One of the key challenges that came up last year for a small startup was they had a zone of restriction that they couldn't go into for native title here in Australia, and trying to understand how they could actually position their drill holes. Simple,
mm,
simple task to do infill drilling to convert inferred material to indicated or measured was really hard for them. It meant that they had to talk to the consultants. They had to go down there. They couldn't actually get together in one platform or one environment, pull all the data together, which the 3D experience would allow, and then they could actually start to see where they could put drill rigs to infill. Just a simple task, right?
mm.
So for me, the 3D experience platform will offer the whole breadth of the scale of mining companies. And I think it's just understanding what the key objectives are. So for that particular company, it was be able to talk, discuss around their immediate challenges. For a big mining company in production, it's probably more around sensor data, right? Pulling it all together to have a greater understanding, to be
Right.
more
Yeah.
informed, to optimize the process. Um, and that applies across that whole spectrum. There is a need, and there is a for all of it. It's just understanding what is the key objective for that company to get started.
Could we on an even more macro level in these big operators that have maybe 6 or 7 operations, even globally, they've maybe got different experts that are would have transferable skill to other sites, but maybe that's limiting. Does this create an opportunity for to connect
Yeah,
those really top end experts across a whole chain of operations?
yeah. I, I feel like you're picking my mind, but this is also topical because I'm actually putting a proposal together at the moment for this very challenge, right? So we're talking to a company. They have 6 mines, most of them surface mines, a couple of underground mines. They have a high turnover of personnel, so
Mm, yeah,
um, they are losing knowledge. They develop knowledge, then it's gone,
right.
it's lost. You know, and they don't believe they're probably maximizing the value of the technologies they have available to them already. So what we're looking at doing is again uh, understanding and mapping their as is, what they are and where they are for all of their 6 operations. See where the commonality is across those
Mm,
different operations, so we
yeah.
can then build start to try and standardize as much as we practically can, and use the platform as the centerpiece of that. So all the data, all our processes are there. And then, but not only that, I think that will then open up the opportunity, to your point, if you have a knowledgeable expert or person on site A, they can be collaborating with people on sites B and C where they find challenges,
Hmm.
and knowledge can be shared, right? So we can actually try and increase the speed of which knowledge is distributed across
And
the
and
organization,
and developed in
captured, and
individuals. Yeah.
yeah, and on individuals, but also then capture for the future, right?
Mm,
So
right.
that's again just going back to that simple collaboration, transparency, governance type aspects of a platform that we can leverage straight away. It's at its fundamental is what the platform in that space.
I'm going to zoom way out on you.
Yep.
Is and this is a tough one. I think it's a impossible question to answer fully, but we'll take a swing at it. The in the market right now, you have the influence of ESG. You have that is a major factor for even a mine getting a permit to get to the next stage. So you've
Yeah.
got that. Then on the other side, you have market demand, which is just absolutely skyrocketing. Where does Dassault come in the middle of that and try to accelerate them both?
I think we're right at the beginning, at the exploration stage. So we are able to pull data around ecology, water, bring it all into a 3D model that's consumable for everyone, both technical people, but also non-technical people. We have capabilities that can then communicate that out to the public so that they are informed about where we are, whether we're right at that exploration study stage or whether we are starting then to move into the strategic planning. How do we build those different key aspects around that as an objective? So obviously, economic outcomes is a must, but ESG type challenges are really part of that process too, right? So we want to maximize the tons per kilowatt hour. We want to ensure we get maximize the amount of metal for every bit of CO2 that we produce. So can we look at changing equipment and what does that do in it into our studies? And these are all the things that companies, mining companies, consultants are all working on now. And we can already apply some of those things, but then how do we capture that knowledge and redistribute it? So we can work across that the whole value chain, uh, where it sits. Each part of the value chain is going to have a little bit of more focus in a particular area. Um, so I think we're well positioned. As I said at the beginning, you know, at our core, sustainability is something that has been established at the same time as the 3D experience platform was established, because it has been uh, a real key thing for us to go from pit to product. And I think really what we as an entity, as Dassault Systems, want to go is from pit to product to circularity, right? So from tracking that whole life cycle, theoretically from what's in the ground to the product it produces, and then recycling that materials as much as we possibly can, is a critical phase. And I see, you know, internally we probably refer to it as uh, is another sense of mining, right? That recycling
Mm,
is another mining concept. For me, it's extract. How do we extract everything out of existing products?
right.
And we're all obviously batteries is going to be an enormous part of that going forward for cars or everything else.
Will with this, so do you have and the 3D experience, will you have an opportunity more and more to use that as again, I'm talking about the high level, the at the government level and at the community level, to be able for them to be more educated on it. And I've told the story many times, and I've referenced a mine that was right by my hometown that didn't go ahead. And and I'd read the technical specs on it, and they had a great dust control program and water management program, noise management. It was all there. And someone who was against the mine, I don't even know who that was, or I can't remember it anymore. But anyway, that it got pushed. It was going to be noisy and dusty, and it wasn't true. It just wasn't true. Um, but that got picked up, and it really had. I think it's a big reason that mine ended up not going. Can your platform, whether it's now or in the future, will it be able to help um, in some cases, maybe the mine shouldn't go ahead. Of course,
Yeah,
let's acknowledge
true.
that.
Uh,
Sometimes it just shouldn't happen. But
Yeah,
in a case where there's misinformation happening about that mine, can that at least bring it to light so people can make an informed decision?
yeah. Look, the 3D experience and the technologies we offer, we work in cities uh, and model cities. We can model airflow in cities. We can have all that data analytics around people living in buildings. We can have the volume on traffic control. All these sorts of things we can model and drill down into the data.
Mhm.
So taking that same technology and applying it into a mining context is no different, right?
Yeah.
It's just another version of a very small town where we have pieces of infrastructure, buildings, towns, roads. To your point, waterways, dust. We can simulate a lot of those sorts of things with airflow models and build that. Once we get the data into the 3D experience platform, then it opens up enormous opportunity to allow us to model those things and then produce visual uh, information that obviously is more helpful for communicating to non-technical people, right? You can see what's going on. You can have that data validated by third party organizations. So you can start to actually see what happens under certain circumstances. If um, you know that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you get a westerly wind comes through your community or your
Mm,
valley. Let's model that day in, day out, different times, different weather conditions, so we can actually see what happens there. So once we have that into the data and the data models, we can start to leverage a lot of the other technologies, which allows us then to communicate that and produce materials that are just not tables of numbers, as you would have, those reports and studies would have sort of shown different graphics, but a lot of it would have been numerical tables.
yeah.
Um, we can actually produce a model that actually shows how that airflow, how that water runoff would react, um, even to tailings dams, right? It's very topical in disasters. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
we see it too
another
often.
community close to mine.
Yeah,
They had a tailings breach, and
yeah,
rightly so. People are, I mean, people are still. I think there's a whole group
yeah.
years later
And
still dedicated on Facebook about it.
I still think, if you were actually able to model the tailings dam failure, uh, and the board could see that model as it flows down a valley and wipes out a community or floods uh, uh, a plateau area and obviously damages that for agriculture for a number of years. If they actually saw that simulation of that failure,
Hmm.
I think it has a significantly more impact for the
Yeah.
board and understanding the potential of the risk, and then them putting in place systems and processes that
Yes.
monitor that more readily. But often, and that's just changing the way the things are communicated, right? When you see something, the massive mud and water flowing through a valley, it is violent, right? And your perspective on the level of importance to monitoring it changes, I think.
Yeah.
So even from that simple point, but even for now, uh, understanding what's sitting in a tailings dam, what levels of moisture are sitting in them, we really need to be able to, and we can model what they do and what possibly would happen if something was to fail. Understand how the wall is constructed of what material, so we can actually model the strength of the tailings walls in valleys. Um, they're all things that can be done today, and build up processes that allow us to both track expansion of the tailings, but also just track what happens under certain weather conditions. What if we
Mm.
have a 1 in 100 year rainfall event?
Mm.
Uh, what's that going to happen? How's that going to impact that facility in year one? How's that going to impact that facility in year 5 or year 10? Because it's all going to be different as the project progresses over its life.
I just want to ask one. This is kind of a whole other topic, but I'm just going to ask in a quick form.
Yep.
Scalability. If a mine, let's say it's a large operator, and they have the permits, they feel like they've got enough in assets to produce to scale up production. With this modeling, I kind of goes without saying it would be perfect for that type of operation, right?
Yeah, so I think that comes back to strategic planning. And traditionally, often when we start out on, say, we'll talk about a greenfields or even a brownfields, you're looking for expansion. You'll do, I don't know, 10, maybe 20 um, different models or simulations or runs to understand impacts. But once we incorporate simulation in its entirety, we can actually start to run tens and hundreds or thousands of different
Mm,
scenarios. Um, and that can actually present new opportunities, but it can also present uh, where the risks are, where the opportunity is. You'll get that terrain that represents a surface of value, and a lot of these things are never one hill. There's lots of valleys and hills in amongst it, based on all the different parameters you're flexing. Um, but it presents an area where you can then analyze these thousands of different scenarios and start to see where you have a zone that gives you value under a whole range of different circumstances, be it
mm,
economic, recovery, process, cost, that you'll be in a positive position. So
right.
there's different ways to do that, and that could be, as to your point, I think you're leading to, is if we're a greenfields, what capacity should or size should the mine be? If we're a brownfields or an existing operation, is there scope for us to increase our production
Yeah.
and increase the scale? So it addresses all those aspects.
It's so exciting. It's so fun to talk about these things. I mean, you know, I come from the equipment world, and so it's quite a privilege for me to actually be able to get to have these discussions and gain a little more understanding. And I hope it's the same for the audience. So, Ralph, thank you very much for coming on. I'm also glad we, in a way, that we did reshoot this because the live events are they're quite efficient with how we have to move through the conversations,
Yeah.
get different energy with people walking around, sometimes walking behind you or through the cameras, and so it's just different. So it was nice because this is an important topic. Getting a chance to actually kind of navigate through it with you, it was lots of fun.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now. And of course, we'll have plenty of links to Dassault Systems and Ralph's LinkedIn and everything like that in the description below. So make sure to connect and stay in tune with the industry. Technology is only getting started. We'll see you on the next episode of Mining Now.